Well, it has been a wild week for Ukrainians, and they don't necessarily know what to believe right now. First, for the last 3 years, they had the U.S. in their corner. Then everyone here witnessed that blow up in the Oval Office, where many Ukrainians rallied around President Zelensky. They felt that he was being cornered, that he was unnecessarily attacked and humiliated. Then they saw this country cut off from intelligence, cut off from military support, which soldiers here in this country desperately need. They need it for targeting. They need it for self-defense. And now they walk up to the news that Ukraine has accepted unilaterally this ceasefire, which is considered to be quite a victory for Ukraine, because now it flips the script. It is not Ukraine that is being accused of avoiding peace. It is not Ukraine that is being blamed for the ongoing conflict. It is up to Russia to accept or reject this ceasefire proposal. So it has been a very trying time, fast-moving events, especially when people here know that their country is on the line, that the future map of Ukraine is being redrawn at this moment, and it is happening so quickly. But today, at this very moment, I think they feel quite satisfied with the end of this diplomatic process, because they want this. They want a peace. They say that they want, however, a lasting peace. And if a ceasefire can bring those negotiations, they certainly welcome it. And if it can expose Vladimir Putin as someone who doesn't want an agreement, all the better for Ukraine.
Richard, it's Ali Vitali, and certainly we're early on in these negotiations, especially as they work towards a long-lasting and enduring peace. But one of the things we've seen the Trump administration be willing to do is pull back that military aid as well as intelligence sharing. It's back on now, but is there concern on the ground that this is something that could just as easily be taken away in the blink of an eye if negotiations turn south again?
Of course, and that faith in the United States as an ally, as a reliable ally, has been, I think, more than just questioned. I think it's been broken in many cases. I was in Ukraine not long ago, and as this breakdown was happening, and Ukrainians were asking, what happened? What happened to our relationship with the United States? What did we do wrong? Those doubts, those lingering concerns, those feelings of abandonment haven't gone away. But the fact that they were just restored, and the fact that the intelligence cooperation is happening again, that the weapon shipments are back in the pipeline, makes Ukrainians feel at this very moment, okay, their stock is rising. But this is a very trying time when you know that the Russians are still attacking. They are a numerically superior force. They're not very far from where I'm standing right now. And if you feel that President Trump, one day to the next, will decide your future, giving you support or not giving you support, depending on the negotiations, it makes many Ukrainians feel that they're being strong-armed. But flipping the script onto Vladimir Putin is something that Ukrainians want to do.
Joining us now is Ned Price, former spokesperson and senior official at both the State Department and CIA. He's also former special assistant to President Obama. Ned, it's great seeing you. I thank you for your time. I want to get your reaction first to what's been going on and what happened in Saudi Arabia, the Ukrainian agreement to unilaterally go into a ceasefire.
Well, Jose, I think Richard put it well. This is a positive step. It's a positive first step, in large part because it does flip the script. It puts the onus on the Russians for once during this administration, which is a good thing. But again, this is only a first step, and I mean that in two ways. In the first instance, of course, President Putin and the Russians ultimately have to accede to this proposal, and I think there are reasons to doubt that they will accede outright. But second of all, I think we need to think about this solely as an interim deal. And I say that because a frozen conflict, essentially freezing the front lines, is not the ultimate basis for a just peace, neither a just nor durable peace. And a just peace, in order for a peace to be just, it needs to make a clear distinction between victim and aggressor. It needs to make a clear distinction in this case between the Russians that precipitated this aggression and invasion in the first instance, and the Ukrainians, whose country has been destroyed, whose economy is in tatters, whose children have been kidnapped. Now, if this interim 30-day ceasefire can be built upon by the parties, and by the parties I mean the Ukrainians, the Russians, the Europeans, and the Americans, in order to look like something that more closely resembles a just peace, that ultimately will be a good thing. I think there are reasons to doubt we will see that, many of which will ultimately emanate from Moscow.
You know, and Ned, yet the fact that we are seeing what is for the first time since the Russians invaded Ukraine, some possible movement. I mean, just the fact that Ukraine is interested in maybe a ceasefire, this whole joint venture with the United States that seems to be on hold. Yes, no, we don't know what that situation is like. But the fact that there is this movement, does it not give you hope?
Look, it does, Jose. I think certainly this is a good thing, and certainly it will be a better thing if it can be built upon as the basis for a just and durable peace. Now the ball moves to Moscow, and I think my skepticism is really born of what I expect we will see from Moscow. Look, Jose, I think it's quite unlikely that we will hear an outright no or niet from Vladimir Putin. And I say that because Putin recognizes that he has a very good thing going with President Trump in this White House, a thing he worked to ultimately achieve in 2016 and to varying degrees in 2020 and 2024. And he doesn't want to squander that entirely. I expect we'll hear something more like a yes, but.
Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He's the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee. Good to have you on. What do you make of what we hear so far about this potential deal? And also Marco Rubio making it very clear that Russia's response will make it very clear to all of us where they stand on peace.
Yeah, Mika, I was sort of chuckling at your characterization at the top of the hour of Ukraine agreeing to a ceasefire. They didn't agree to a ceasefire. They bent the knee to the extortion that started in the Oval Office when President Trump and Vice President Vance beat up on Zelensky, cut off his flow of arms, and cut off the intelligence sharing that every day saves lives in places like Kyiv. So no surprise there when you're being extorted by the most powerful country in the world. Eventually, you have to go along with it. Now, a ceasefire is a good thing. Fewer people will die. The resumption of intelligence to Ukraine, I should say, about Russia is a good thing. But let's be very clear about what's going to happen in this ceasefire. The Russians are going to take advantage of their industrial might to move troops to surround the Kursk salient, where, as you know, the Ukrainians had invaded into Russia, and to reposition for a much more bloody subsequent follow-up once the ceasefire, as it inevitably will, is ended.
Congressman, certainly you express real pessimism there that Russia will abide this in at least any meaningful way, perhaps beyond the 30 days. So what does need to happen, in your estimation, for a more permanent end to this conflict?
Well, and let me be clear here. I think that, Russia thinks in terms of years and decades with respect to Ukraine, as we saw, because they really started this invasion in 2014, 11 years ago when they went into Crimea. So I don't know that Putin sort of 6 months from now is on the move. But this doesn't end because, of course, the way that this has come about is one that says to Vladimir Putin, this is painful and expensive, but eventually you get what you want, especially if Donald Trump is president. So, again, we'll need to see what sort of security guarantees are ultimately given to the Ukrainians. Donald Trump says there will be none. That plus Putin learning that, expensive though it may be, he achieves his aims is something that he learns. By the way, it's something that President Xi in Beijing also learns with respect to what he may or may not do in Taiwan. So, again, I don't know if this is a disaster in the next 6 months or the next 6 years, but given the way that the United States has behaved, this is a disaster being set up.
Well, your characterization, though a Democrat, and people watching may think, well, he's just saying that because he's an elected Democrat. It lines up a good bit with what the Wall Street Journal editorial page says. In fact, the headline is Ukraine bows to Trump ceasefire. I am curious, though, the Biden administration for years said this war was not going to be won militarily. What Marco Rubio said flying over to Saudi Arabia, as I said on the show a few days ago, echoed what I heard from the Biden administration all the way back to 2023. So what does need to be done, in your estimation, to make sure that this ceasefire is permanent?
Yeah, Joe, fair characterization, by the way, and you sort of brought partisanship into this, so let me indicate how I think about this partisanship. You characterized Biden's position exactly right, which is that this was not going to be won. The way this would have been won would have been 3 years ago when the Russians first invaded, if the Biden administration had given the Ukrainians quickly the weapons they needed to push the Russians back. That did not happen. Instead, we, for a period of years, gave the Ukrainians the weapons they needed to lose slowly. That's a bad strategy that was implemented by the Biden administration, if what we're talking about here is partisan views. But to your question, your forward-looking question, the key now is security guarantees, right? So, we cut the ground out from under Ukraine. Why the president chose to do that rather than with Russia, I have my theories on, but we cut the ground out from under Ukraine. Now the question is, what security guarantees will be provided? Donald Trump says no. My guess is that Europe is going to come up with something. But if there are not good security guarantees that make it obvious to Putin that he cannot go beyond whatever line of ceasefire he gets to, this will happen again.
So, folks, what we're seeing here is a really interesting debate. And I do want to hear what you guys think in the comments, because I think there's a real legitimate debate, not like a Trump versus reality debate, where on the one side, Trump's saying everyone's eating cats and dogs, and on the other side, we say, Donald, what the hell are you talking about? That's stupid. Like an actual debate, like this move by Ukraine, how much of it is them scoring a strong move, and how much of it is them, being kind of forced into a difficult position by a pro-Putin regime, at least that's my opinion, in Trump and Vance and the rest of the GOP, or at least most of the GOP. And I think it's a bit of both, but I also think Ukraine is playing this the best they can with the hand they have to maximize sympathy within Europe, within their own border, and with the American people. Because right now, things are very clear. Only one of the three sides looks fully reasonable right now. Obviously, Russia doesn't. I don't need to go into it. They're clearly the aggressors, the worst party here. Donald Trump, though, not the American people, but the American government, the Republican-led American government, their position isn't very popular, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the Ukrainian one, that they're willing to make a deal, I think helps appeal to all sides. That Zelensky is making an important play, and in leaking the nitty-gritty of all of this out. Because again, Zelensky knew Trump would do that to him. I'm convinced Zelensky, this is my speculation, but tell me if I'm wrong, Zelensky wanted Trump to say what he said on camera. Because as crazy as we think Trump is, no one would have believed that meeting was as bad as it was if the cameras weren't in the room. They wouldn't have. Even people now would be like, no, that's too much even for Trump and Vance. Too much. They needed to see that. And because the world saw that, it gave Zelensky a lot more sympathy from everybody.